You open your eyes to the faint glow of embers, the last heat of last night's fire lingering low. Beyond this small circle of warmth waits a land of deep snow and biting wind, where each step means work, and every breath reminds you of winter's weight. The traps you set before dusk may hold food, or they may stand empty, and hunger will follow if they do. The mountain spares little, and never without cost. Yet each trial of daylight makes night gentler. Every weary muscle, every frozen hand, softens at the quiet edge of firelight. And as the embers fade, the morning begins. Before we settle in, if you enjoy these relaxing journeys into the past, like the video and subscribe for more quiet history evenings. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now let's get comfortable and ease into tonight's journey. Dawn in the frozen wild does not invite you gently. The first breath you draw is sharp and thin, air so cold it bites at the inside of your nose and throat. Frost clings to the edge of your blanket, stiff and brittle, and as you shift it away, the chill immediately spreads deeper into your chest. Muscles protest before you even sit up, carrying yesterday's miles in every joint. The ground beneath you is no real rest, just pine boughs and frozen earth. There is no pause to linger. The morning demands you rise. Your hands are slow to move. Fingers curl reluctantly, thick and clumsy as they lace boots, as if the leather had turned to iron overnight. Cold creeps under your nails, biting hard as though it knows you'll use them before warmth returns. But there's no time to rub life into them. The trap lines must be checked before anything else finds them. Another set of jaws, a wolverine, a fox, even another man, might claim what you placed yesterday. If that happens, you go hungry, and hunger waits close at hand. Stepping outside the shelter, the land greets you with silence. Snow crunches beneath your boots, brittle and hollow, each step piercing the stillness. The sky hangs low, grey and heavy, refusing to let the sun show its face. Pines rise in solemn ranks, tall and unmoving, their branches groaning softly in the wind. No bird breaks the quiet, no stream stirs with sound. All you feel is the weight of the mountain air pressing against your chest. It is a silence that does not comfort. It reminds you of how closely you are watched, how little room there is for error here. The straps of your pack dig into your shoulders as you move. Their pull familiar, but heavier in the morning chill. The woods seem to measure each movement, as if nothing escapes their notice. In this place, you're not master, not guest, only one more creature held within its keeping. The cold drives this truth home with every breath. It seeps through seams in your coat, coils down your spine, stiffens the hinges of your knees. Even a simple task, resetting a snare, bending to check bait, requires full attention and steady care. Each breath pulls pain from the lungs, as though the air were cut from glass. Still, dawn carries its quiet gamble. Every day begins with the same question. Will the traps be bare again, their bait stolen clean in the night, or will they hold what you need? The mountain does not say. You may walk for days across timberline and ice, only to come back with heavier emptiness. Or chance might provide, when you're near spent. No man controls such a balance, but all must answer to it. The march presses on. Snow rides high on your boots, filling seams until they carry half the mountain with each step. The narrow trail ahead shows only for a while, a white ribbon twisting between tree trunks, before disappearing beneath fresh drifts. Your prints vanish behind you as quickly as you lay them down. The woods allow no memory, only this moment. Resin and frost mix on your breath, sharp and raw, until the scent itself feels carved clear. The climb deepens as you push past bowed saplings, their limbs bent with layered snow. Brush scrapes cloth, needles brittle with ice. Each step beats a rhythm into the silence. Boot against powder, lungs heaving sharp, fabric grinding against bark. It is not music but labour, and it repeats without fail. Here progress is not measured in distance but in effort spent, one moment's endurance stacked against the next. A crow breaks the quiet with a single harsh cry in the distance. Its call scrapes across the ridges, then trails away. For a breath the world feels less hollow, and you remember that life does remain here, hidden in brush and burrow. Perhaps a hare waits close or a fox hunts low along the slope. You rarely see them, but their presence settles in the mind. You are not entirely alone. Yet this company carries no warmth, only the reminder that every creature here fights the same struggle. Your body begins to find rhythm again as the sky fades to lighter grey. Breath steadies slightly. Steps match against the land, carrying you farther from the meagre shelter behind. Hunger makes itself known. The ache in your stomach sharp, but familiar. It speaks of the day before, when meals were light and short, and of what is at stake if the lines stand empty now. Every mile presses the same truth. Survival here is built slowly. One step, one gesture, one day. Patience above all, and acceptance of what the land allows. The stillness grows heavier with each stretch of trail, but it is a weight you have grown accustomed to. There are no choices at this early stage, only to move forward. Turning back sharpens hunger, standing still steals time. So you go on, the mountain pressing itself into your bones with every hour. And though the cold claws at your hands and the pack cuts along your shoulders, you move into the grey light because it is the only way left. Ahead, the trail narrows into game paths, winding deeper into the trees. The morning asks more from you still, and the land will decide what it yields. The walk to the traps is long and slow, the trail forcing you on through narrow game paths and drifts that climb past your boots. The wind never quite stops cutting across your face, and every breath feels thin, scraped sharp into your chest before vanishing into the cold air. Fresh snow from the night lies heavy under each step. It clings and pulls as though the land itself would rather you stayed still. What should be quick strides sink into resistance, turning each mile into work that burns the legs and tightens the back before the first hour is done. This is a trail you know, though it never looks the same twice. Each storm erases its memory, smoothing away prints, softening edges until all paths blend into one whiteness. Yet if you pause and crouch low, the forest leaves hints. A sharp cut of a deer hoof, frozen mid-step. The faint line where a branch dragged across the surface. The scatter of prints that tell of something hunted or chasing. These are the words written here, as clear to you as ink on paper. To live in this place, you read them every morning, not for curiosity, but out of need. You keep quiet. The crunch of boots, the sound of your own breath, the sudden crack of a twig echoing louder than expected. These fill the morning air. Silence stretches time, slowing each hour into something longer than itself. Still, there is no avoiding movement. The traps wait ahead, and hunger allows little patience. Empty or not, each one must be tended. The answer they give will determine whether the day brings strength or merely another evening of weariness. The first trap sits in open snow at the edge of the trees. You stop and study it carefully, scanning for any break in the surface, any slight shift that signals a struggle. But the iron rests exactly as you left it yesterday. No snow disturbed, no claw marks dragged through the powder, even the baited stick brushed with the caster mixture. Heavy with musk from beaver glands, sharpened with cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, and a splash of whiskey, stands untouched. That mixture, strong as it is, can carry far on the air, but nothing was curious enough last night to come near. You kneel in the snow, brushing frost off the trap with gloved knuckles. The metal resists, stiffened by the cold, and your fingers work slowly in the sting of morning air. You reset the jaws and steady the stake, careful with every motion. Empty iron, but not wasted time. A trap waits as a question, and most answers are silence. You stand again, legs stiff, eyes already on the line that bends deeper into trees and further away. The land grows rougher as the hours stretch. Roots and frozen streams lie hidden, waiting under snow. The straps of your light pack carve deeper into sore shoulders, even if there is little in it yet to weigh it down. The cold draws into your hands until your fingers feel little more than blocks of wood pressed inside a stiff cloth. Still, your pace holds steady. Instinct carries you down slopes and across ridges where water runs beneath the ice, toward places where beavers keep their paths. At one bend, the surface of the snow tells a different story. The smoothness is broken, pressed down and broken apart where something struggled. Churned snow hardens into lumps and ridges where a body kicked and rolled. Following the trail of marks, you find the steel jaws closed tight. A beaver lies still against its chain, edged with frost already spreading across its coat. The fur is thick, layered against the same cold that sharpens your breath now, the same cold that did not spare it. Work begins immediately, because delay carries risk. A pelt left too long is harder to keep sound. With stiff hands, you set the knife to the hide, making the first cuts around the hind legs. The process is practiced. A circle at the ankles, a steady pull to free hider from flesh, careful not to tear what will be stretched and dried later. The carcass gives back little warmth, but it carries enough to prickle your fingers back toward life as you work. Once stripped, the pelt is folded against your pack, flesh side in to protect the fur. The meat, the back legs and tail most of all, will travel too, both food and fuel. What cannot be carried will sink back into the trees, for others that endure here. You kneel again to reset the steel. The jaws are locked open, the chain fixed tight, the bait renewed with another smear of caster scent that bites at the nose even through bitter air. It is quick work, but not careless. Each trap is both tool and wager, and another chance waits tomorrow in this very place. The fur strapped against your back is more than warmth. In the trade tongue, it is worth between $4 and $6. In good seasons, the gathering of 30 or 40 of them might carry a man through the year. They are currency, goods that tie this silent forest to distant markets and crowded places where the fashion of a beaver hat drives men to risk mountains, storms, and solitude. To you here, it is also meat for the fire and covering for the night. The value runs in both directions, but its first gift is survival. The weight of the catch shifts your stride, one shoulder drawn heavier than the other. Muscles ache sooner now, yet the body eventually finds its balance. The land teaches by repetition, and today's lesson repeats the one before. Push forward, accept the strain, fold discomfort into rhythm. You carry strength for another night's fire, though it costs you in every joint. It is the trade given each day. The mountain offers something, but it always keeps its share. The trail narrows where the trees crowd thick, their branches folding low and heavy with snow. Sound returns to its old stillness. Wind moves lightly here, muted in the close wood. Your breath fogs and fades before you again, the air sharper than before. Snowflakes gather on your hat, melt in your body's heat, and freeze once you pause. The work never stops weighing on you, not even after the forest has yielded what it had to give. Another day will ask more. Another day will demand the same walk, with no promise of return. Yet as heavy as the pack rests, there is something different in the step now. Hunger in your stomach meets the food you'll soon prepare. Cold in your fingers meets the fur folded against your back. What the trap line gave today steadies you through what lies ahead. The forest stays quiet, but you move through it with the small assurance that, for now, it has given enough. Hunger grows sharper as you return from the line, body aching from the walk and the weight carried back. Each step keeps your thoughts fixed on food, not as a comfort, but as a need waiting by the fire. Smoke drifts faintly upward as you near the clearing, where wood begins its slow crumble into coal. The haze rising into the cold carries the scent of pine resin and ash, and with it the assurance of warmth and work ahead. Fatigue presses against your arms and back, but the thought of a meal steadies you more than rest could. Even a small flame becomes a marker of endurance. Before food fills the body, fire must be coaxed to life. You crouch near the coals, smoke crawling upward, only to be torn away by the wind. Wood set aside the night before now breaks free in your hands. The smaller branches catch fire first, guiding the ember bed into wider heat. The gathering and tending is as practiced as any other duty, done with instinct and repetition. Soon the smoke sharpens and rises more steadily as flames lay down a foundation of glowing coals. Here heat builds not just for comfort, but for necessity. Without it, meat remains what it is. With it, the day's catch turns into strength the body can draw from. Your knife, worn through years of use, opens the body of the beaver with a firm press and measured slide. Strips of meat are freed, uneven and simple, cut only for function. Thin branches, green under their bark, are shaved smooth and used as crude spits. The strips are draped across them near the coals. Fat spits when the fire catches them, crackling down into the ash below with snapping sounds. Hunger pulls your attention closer to the stick than to the forest, as if every hiss of dripping fat carries its own promise. The air thickens quickly with scent, heavy and rich, turning the clearing into something almost dense. It clings to your coat and gloves, and with each full breath, your stomach draws tighter with expectation. The back legs roast into stringy cuts, enough to steady your body, if not to satisfy it fully. The tail, though, is treated differently. Thick, scaly, and swollen with fat, it rests beside the hottest coals. As the skin blisters and softens, it begins to peel away. Underneath lies dense flesh, nearly pure fat, shining under the light of the fire. For those unused to it, such richness seems overwhelming. But here, fat means survival. It means more than taste. Each bite gives heavy, deep calories that can outlast hours of trudging through snow. This tale, prized by trappers and tribes, was never wasted, often spoken of it as a delicacy because its fat could carry a man through where lean muscle alone would falter. Beside the fire, a small blackened pot now simmers. Water from a frozen creek, melted carefully, rolls into a slow boil. Into it falls a small scattering of coffee grounds, drawn from a pouch that grows lighter with each season. The brew is strong, dark, nearly bitter. Its value runs well beyond taste. In a place where cold seeps into life through the skin, coffee lends warmth to the inside. It sharpens a mind dulled by fatigue, quickens hands that grow stiff, and delivers a kind of steadiness unmatched even by food. Each swallow is more than a habit. It is another layer of protection pressed into the body. When the meat is ready, it peels from the stick firm and hot. Teeth work against it, slow at first, then steady. The chew is tough but serviceable. Fresh food here feels as vital as breath itself, each stringy pull easing the tight ache at your core. Hunger sinks back with every mouthful. Fat moves deeper into you, almost radiant by the time it settles low in your stomach. Hunger does not vanish. You never truly fill, but it loosens its grip, enough to remind you that strength will last for what else the day demands. Eating shifts how the land feels. Cold stays but less sharp. The silence of pines overhead feels less harsh with something heavy in your belly. The meal does not excuse the mountain of its cost, but it blunts its edge. Rations remain tight, never plentiful, never filling the body with ease, but always enough to move forward. That is the rhythm here. What you are given is only what is needed. When the meal wanes, the work does not end. Leftover flesh cannot simply be set aside. Strips too dense to enjoy now must be cut thinner and laid across racks of green sticks to dry near the smoky heat. They stiffen into jerky that will be pulled down days from now when no catch comes. Other portions, cut lean and dried almost to a powder, can be stored differently still. By pounding them into dust and binding them with hot, melted fat, bare grease if you have it, you make dense blocks stored for the longest need. To these, when the season allows, you add berries, sharpness against the fat, and a trace of sweetness hidden deep. Pemmican, the food of endurance, can last through winters entire, even years without spoiling. In lean spans, when traps stand bare and snows bury the ground so deep, even deer cannot be tracked, that stored food waits silent, the assurance of another day survived. The principle is always the same. Nothing is wasted, every part turned into something that endures. Fat feeds fire. Bones can sharpen into needles or harden as tools. Sinew works as a binding. Hide stretches into shelter against the wind. A meal stands at the centre of it, but the circle widens from it in every direction. Every scrap pressed into use. Efficiency is not a choice, it is the condition of living here. Soon the hunger softens into heaviness, and steam from your breath blends with the fire's smoke. The cup is emptied, the pot nudged aside, the last of the meat cooling under the coal's fading glow. The body feels steadier, the ache of miles pulled back enough to face what lies ahead. In the stillness, the forest holds quiet again, but around you, tasks remain. The light begins to shift, sharpening with the change of the afternoon. Clouds above lean thicker, tugging the sky darker, a reminder that the day still asks for more effort before it yields to night. Shelter cannot wait for storms to gather. In this country, safety is built by hand before night decides its terms. Mountain men relied not only on what they learned by trial, but also by those who had long lived here. One design, borrowed from native people across the land, proved its worth through centuries. A low, rounded frame of poles, covered in green boughs, bark or hides. Often called a wickie-up, It was small, quick to raise, and strong enough when the wind turned fierce. You follow that same wisdom now, not because it belongs to you, but because it works. The first task is gathering. Pine boughs crowd the lower limbs, their needles heavy, their edges rough with resin. A knife frees them quickly enough, and you carry them back by the armful. The steps wear grooves into the snow, but the work continues. Soon you've piled a thick mound on the edge of your clearing, dark green, stacked against the white field. Each branch means another wall's worth of cover when laid down together. Saplings grow straight and narrow in the shallow ground nearby. Some bend and sway when pulled, giving enough spring to shape into a frame without snapping. A few strokes of the blade cut them free. Their narrow trunks, pale where the bark chips away, form the ribs of your shelter. You drive the bases into the frozen ground, pulling them together, overhead, until they cross and hold shape. 4 poles form the bones, then others lean against them, curved into an arch. The shape rising before you is rough, but it promises a place to crawl inside once the work is finished. To bind the frame, sinew saved from earlier hunts is twisted into a cord. Pine bark, stripped of its inner threads, is added where needed to press more ties into service. They bite at your fingers, stiff and cold in the wind, snapping once or twice before a knot holds. Skin rubs raw with each pull, but with time the joints stiffen together, forming dome-like ribs fixed tight to the earth. Low, close, but strong enough to resist the weight of snow. Layering the roof asks more of the body than the mind. Boughs are dragged to the frame, set over one another, again and again, until the whole is crowded with needles and branches. There is no place for order, only weight piled thick enough to keep snow and wind from finding a way through. Neat lines would waste time. What matters is depth. The rougher and denser it lies, the tighter the cover becomes. With each layer, the air within shifts towards stillness, the outside pressed away. Slowly, the shape becomes clear. A mound, rounded with a narrow gap left at the bottom for crawling inside. Inside, the walls lean close. Green needles prick the outer coat if you shift too far. Yet the darkness within feels solid, almost quiet in its closeness. You gather more boughs to lay flat across the ground, a mat to lift you from the frozen floor, and ease the bite of ice. The pine smell fills the hollow, strong enough that it sharpens in the nose. Where the outside wind rattles the trees, within here stands the first trace of calm. A small pit dug in the centre holds the fire. You work the striker against steel, catching sparks into dry chips saved earlier. Flame rises quickly, feeding on the resin. It crackles with the sound of snapping twigs as you add wood. You keep it low, no higher than need allows, for smoke within a small chamber carries its own danger. Too much, and it blinds and chokes, driving you out into the storm. Too little, and the cold returns unchecked. Fire set inside a shelter like this has always been such a bargain. A narrow line must be walked, the flame balanced on the edge between suffocation and freezing. It is not comfort, but calculation, a measure that divides endurance from loss. Light spills against the walls, shadows rolling across the needles and branches. Heat creeps into your fingers, slow but sure, soaking away stiffness in joints. Sap pops from the boughs, carrying sweetness into the smoke that hangs low, heavy against the roof, before it finds its way out. Each breath fills the chest and lungs with heat, scent, and a sense of holding place in the storm. Outside, the wind rises, Loose snow sweeps against the shelter and piles up its sides, voices of the trees bending hard in the gale. The ground shakes faintly when gusts press heavily against it. Yet within, the dome holds. Small as it is, made of nothing more than poles and branches, it shields warmth against the gathering night. The world outside may carry strength, but here it is muted, reshaped into sound rather than touch. There is no promise of ease. Smoke stings the eyes if the fire flares. Heat fades if the flame dips low. But for a time the space serves, set carefully between two enemies. The storm that would reach you, if not blocked, and the fire itself, which must be sharper than helpful, yet small enough to spare your breath. In a place where choices are stripped bare, such shelter makes the only choice that matters, sufficient protection to last through the dark. You sit low, body near the flame, quiet inside the narrow walls. The storm outside grows louder, carrying snow that slaps against the roof. The sound sharpens with force, yet the walls hold firm, built from what the land handed over before dusk. Tonight there is no luxury of space or ease, only close walls, a soft bed of needles and a cautious fire that must be watched until morning has the kindness to return. The storm continues without pause. Shadows flicker, fire glows, smoke swirls faintly against the curved roof. What you have built now is not grand, but it is enough to hold. And as the cold presses harder, you sense the truth threaded through every shelter raised this way, that survival rests in small spaces, careful fire, and walls thick enough to keep the night at bay. Soon the test of the shelter begins in earnest. The night asks its own price, and the cold collects it in ways both sharp and slow. Wind whistles first through the roof of boughs, then builds into a steady rush that works into every weak seam of the shelter. Though the walls are thick, air still finds its path, a thin draught brushing across the neck, a curl of chill slipping beneath the blanket. It is never enough to break all at once, but always enough to gnaw at the edges of warmth. The cold does not strike boldly, it creeps, testing how much you can give before it takes more. You lean toward the fire, but its reach is close. The circle of heat warms your hands, though your back and legs remain stiff with chill. You keep the flames lower than instinct tells you to build them. Wood is measured carefully. Your pile must last past midnight, and daylight feels a long distance away. To make the coals endure, you push ash thick over them before resting again. Banking the fire in this way preserves its heart through the long hours, insulating embers so they smoulder slowly under cover, alive in secret. When the cold presses too deep, you scrape them bare and add another stick, coaxing back a quick flame. In this balance lies survival. Keep the fire too high, and fuel is gone by dawn. Let it go entirely cold, and you begin from nothing, wrestling to strike life out of steel, while numb fingers stumble. The ache in your body gathers steadily. Shoulders and thighs bear marks of long effort from walking traps and bending saplings into place. Muscles knot instead of easing, pressed tight against earth that offers no softness. A thin blanket of wool, worn even before this season, and a layer of pine needles are all that separates you from frozen ground. The hard earth draws heat out with patience, leaving each joint stiff whenever you shift. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow, not just from the cold in the air, but from the press of stone and ice beneath every movement. The ground itself teaches you the cost of lying down, unprepared. Pain sharpens most in the hands. Skin split raw from cutting wood, and tying cords stays swollen even while the fire sparks near. Fingers refuse to follow thought, curling half slow, fumbling with tools as though another layer stands between you and them. Blood moves sluggishly, and so you rub them together often, pressing hard, forcing what little warmth remains to circulate. Frostbite lurks close, never named aloud, but always set in mind, like a threat, already begun. The mountain allows little carelessness. One mistake can cost you the use of both hands, and with them, nearly all the means of survival. Thin layers of wool are pulled higher and pressed close. A patched blanket, its fibres worn from years, cannot repel cold in truth. Still, each thread counts as if it adds another note to the fire's song. Knees are drawn up tight against the chest, stacking what warmth remains. The body folds smaller to protect itself. Sleep rolls shallow across you. When the fire dims, a shiver wakes you. When wind hurls itself again against the shelter, another startle drives away any dream. Rest comes only in broken intervals, minutes at a time, maybe an hour, never whole. Each waking forces you to feed a hidden coal, to adjust the blanket, to rub new warmth into barren hands. What you collect through these fragments hardly feels like rest. Still, it is enough to carry you forward. What is taken in pieces allows for another dawn and another step. Here on snow-covered ground, with no bed but pine and earth, you learn the truth. Comfort does not live in this place. The mountain asks only if you will endure, and nothing else. It speaks the lesson by stripping away ease until only will remains, leaving you to measure if that will can outlast the night. The pile of wood shrinks faster than you would wish. Each stick burns down quicker than the time it took to drag it back. You no longer waste logs on full flames. Instead, you feed little, waiting until coals begin to falter before uncovering and waking them again. Banking staves off the waste, holding embers through hours when fuel is gone. It is not patience for its own sake, but for preservation, the work of calibrating fire against hunger and dark. The rhythm of scraping ash aside, lying on a branch and watching fire bloom into cinder becomes your way of marking the hours. There is no clock here, but the slow cycle of flame humbling into glow, then glow swelling into flame again. Outside, a storm tears across the ridge, with sound alone for its measure. Snow pelts the roof until the shelter hums with the weight of it. Wind rises deep, then drops, then rises again, as though the mountain breathes out in long, heavy sighs. Inside the dome of branches, those voices are hushed but not forgotten. They remind you at every turn of the strength hanging just beyond. You are small within it, smaller still when alone. The walls hold, yet you know such things cannot defeat what rages above. Shelter is no promise, only borrowed space to allow dawn time to find you. The night gives little mercy. You are stretched thin between small fires and blasts of wind, between the desire for real rest and the unsettled ground that provides none. Dreams drift shallow and are quickly lost. Yet in those fragments of sleep, will gathers back enough to face another hour. Each waking, no matter how restless, is bound with the memory that you remain alive within the storm, and that endurance is answer enough. When the air begins to shift, it does so gently. A faint light bleeds into the tight walls above. You know its shape before seeing, the thin glow of morning carefully threading through. Your body is heavy, sinews locked tight, eyes refusing to clear. Still, beneath the ache and weariness, there is proof. The fire's heart is yet alive, hidden red beneath its mound of ash. Snow still whispers against the roof, but its violence has softened. You stretch stiffly, and though every joint argues its protest, something has been won. The cold has claimed its share and left its marks, but it has not taken you whole. Through fragments of rest, through the patience of watching flame breathe under cover, through the punishment of lying on frozen earth, the hours have passed. Dawn has returned, indifferent yet constant. And as you stir, you know the world beyond your shelter has changed during the night. The storm leaves behind a silence that feels weighted, as though the land itself were holding its breath. When you push aside the pine branches at the entrance of your shelter, you find a world reshaped. The snow has evened things over, drifts smoothed into a clean white surface, where every trace of your steps has been erased. The sharp edges of yesterday's trails are gone, swallowed and buried. Even the trees carry the heaviness of night, their branches bowed low under new weight. For a moment you stand there, still and quiet. The storm has reset the country in one sweep, but in that blankness lies its greatest gift, a page newly written, waiting to be read. Fresh snow holds stories from the very moment it lands. They never last long, but in the hours just after a storm, its record is clearer than any trail guide. You step forward lightly, careful not to trample the surface, before you've seen what it already shares. Only a short walk from your shelter, the first signs appear, tiny prints, close set, string across the white, in measured leaps. You kneel, brush the crusted layer aside, and find the toes and faint claws pressed sharply against the ground. A hare passed here during the storm's lull, ducking under the edge of the trees for cover. Its line twists back and forth, erratic, before vanishing into the thicket. Small though it is, such a trail carries meaning. The knowledge is not only of tonight's meal, but of where snares might wait well. A little further on lies the print of another. Paws mark the snow in neat pairs, with the long memory of a tail dragging behind, tracing loose curves between each step. A fox. Its gait stays low to the ground, purposeful, angling toward a hollow scraped by roots. It likely paused there, muzzle wide and alert, inhaling scents you cannot know. You do not follow far, but you take what it tells. Fox and hare move close to you. Predator and prey both here, and by their trails you map not only food, but the ties of life that turn all around you. At the river, where the current claws through the ice, the meaning grows weightier. Bark is stripped from the trunks, leaving pale, bare wood, scattered with the parallel etch of teeth. Beaver work. Their cutting feeds their lodges and dams, a forest reshaped for their own shelter, as much as yours is bent by hand. You touch where they gnawed, rough grooves, uneven but steady. The pelt on your back reminds you how high their worth runs, both as warmth and trade. But the mark here says more than that. It says rivers still feed this valley. It means life is abundant enough here that you do not waste your time walking it. The land reveals itself in these ways to anyone who takes the time to stop. To quick eyes, the forest is only white and shadow, but lingering, you see detail everywhere. Every print, every bent branch, every tilt of snow load holds meaning as though written out in script. Step by step, such signs shift the path you take. Hares guide you toward fresh ground for snares. Fox paths remind you where prey still gathers. Even the way your boots strike offers a clue. When snow falls hollow and drums, hidden air warns of weakness beneath. When powder lies smooth and dry above sheen, ice sits close, waiting to seize the ankle or crack through to water. This reading is not only for food, it keeps you alive. Deep tracks, splayed and round, might point to elk heavy with weight, but they can lead you into steep ground you cannot leave before dark. Scratched bark high on a trunk warns of a bear, and the stillness of wide, padded impressions, with no claw at their head, speaks to a mountain lion. Those round prints come silent and pull you into danger, their maker shifting, unseen through the trees. Grisly tracks, broad as a man's outstretched hand, speak in plainer words. Avoidance is the lesson written in snow. These signs are not only guides to pursue, but warnings to turn elsewhere. By tracking, you watch the language of risk unfold just as clearly as any hunt. Every crouch you take deepens the forest's murmur. Hare leaps mark the panic of a life chased always. Fox steps line out hunger, sharp as your own. Scarred trunks record the teeth of wood, working beneath storms. In the smallest mark pressed to snow, the world admits what it has carried through the hours you slept. This is not reading with eyes only. It is shaping choice from what the land sets before you. Each time you rise from the snow, you move differently, acknowledging what the page has written down. The quiet bends to you as you move more slowly. At first it seems soundless, but pausing, hearing tight movement where needles shift, you sense the living margin around you. The ground proves every step false if you believe no one else treads here. Following these signs, you adopt a slower pace, letting patience carve its way into your body as firmly as cold air has. Sight becomes sharper, ears tuned not for calls and shouts but for rustles brief, almost imagined. The forest shifts from empty to crowded, all through still marks pressed into white. What grows over time is more than hunting skill. The land itself, tracked long enough, becomes a map not of lines drawn in ink, but of constant alteration. Rivers swell and tear new channels. Avalanches tear banks bare. Storms move timber to the ground in an instant. A paper map could say the river bends here. The stand of trees lies there. But such descriptions fail after floods or fire, just as mountain men knew. Rivers change, landmarks burn, hillsides collapse. The only way to find your path is in the living details, the marks refreshed by snow, the scars newly carved by tooth and ice. To read this shifting world is to carry the only map worth using. Morning stretches onward. As you keep your eyes open, learning as you go, you begin to see that reading the land is not a matter of choice. Each print, each trace is instruction. Whether it tells where food lingers or warns where you must not follow, it is all the same record carved into the earth, erased and rewritten by every passing hour. And so you move with it, adjusting, answering silently in your steps. The fire you built, the food you found, even the shelter that held you, all come from this same practice. The land speaks, and you learn to answer. What tools you can depend on do not always rest in your pack, or in the steel that dulls with use. They wait around you just as surely as tracks pressed in snow, waiting to be shaped by those still willing to see them. When steel runs low, the work of survival shifts back to your own hands. A broken knife or dulled edge does not mean the end of usefulness. It only means you must begin again, with what lies close. Out here, the forest and the remains of the hunt replace any blacksmith or trader. Tendons pulled from a deer's leg, dried hard and then rolled until soft, become cords. Sinew drawn thin into strands, binds wood to bone and holds through cold and strain. What once carried an animal in life, now binds together tools fit for your own. It is not pretty work, but it holds. Stone replaces steel where iron cannot reach. Along riverbanks and hillsides, stones scatter loose. Some break with edges already sharp. Others must be struck until a sliver falls free, thin and blade-like. Hands work carefully, napping angles until an arrow point appears, or a cutting edge thin enough to pare hide. It takes time and patience, but a single stone can yield edge after edge if struck cleanly. These tools gleam less than forged steel, but they function. And in the mountains, function is what endures. The forest shapes more than blades. Straight saplings, tested for grain and weight, are transformed into arrow shafts or handles. Bark stripped from the right trees twists down into strong cordage, just as sinew does. Even bones, too small for eating, become awls, punches, or scraping teeth. Every part of an animal, every length of branch finds some use. The wilderness is not bare when your hands make it into what is needed. What caravans would pack and sell in towns wait here already, though without polish. And polish does not matter when survival rests on whether a thing works. Snares carry this truth most clearly. Rawhide, shaved thin and stretched supple into strips, becomes a loop. A sapling bent to the ground gives the tension, the land itself powering the trap. Staked firm, the noose waits quietly across a game trail. 3, 4, sometimes more, are planted in places where hare or fox have crossed. They wait with patience, deeper than yours, sprung only by a passing step. Many hang empty from day to day, but one in time closes around life. That one makes the difference between hunger stretching on or being eased for a night. Your hands carry scars and stains from constant use. Knuckles split against cold air, fingertips blackened by smoke, skin darkened with grease from hides. Yet each pelt has its worth. When a beaver or deer is taken, you skin it carefully, then stretch the hide tight across a frame. To make it last, you reach for a specific tool. Not sharp this time, but dull, a fleshing knife, curved and fixed to a handle. You scrape it hard across the skin, peeling away the stubborn layers of fat and tissue. If even a thin layer remains, the hide will rot, spoiling before it can be traded or worn. So you scrape again and again until only clean hide shines across the frame. Time and steady force turn an animal into something useful, beyond meat, something of real value. In trade towns far off, this pelt carries the weight of coin. But here, its first worth is warmth. With enough care, those hides soften into leather worked by smoke into buckskin. Buckskin moves with the body instead of stiffening. It breathes enough to keep sweat from trapping against the skin, but dense enough to block the mountain wind. Most of all, because it is smoked through, it stays soft after getting wet. A rain that ruins cotton, leaving it soaked and heavy, stealing warmth until it kills, leaves buckskin still bearable, still usable. You pull on leggings cut from it, or a shirt sewn together with sinew, and the wear plain but strong. Soft cotton would trap water against you. Buckskin lets you keep walking, breathing, moving, instead of freezing where you stand. In this way, buckskin is not luxury. It is survival stitched into cloth. Nothing is wasted when your tools rise from what is taken. A rib, hollowed, serves as a scraper's base. Feathers make arrows steady in their flight. Melted fat cools into hard tallow, rubbed over leather to keep it supple or tucked away to feed the fire. Even shards of half-burnt wood are carried, their coal edges sharpened to points, their surfaces struck against steel to coax sparks. Each scrap repurposed means another few days carried forward. Waste is not an option here. What is left behind only shortens the time you have. The tools themselves are plain. No carvings curl across their handles, no polish glimmers on their edges. They are not made to be admired. Elegance is useless where hunger waits. A bow is bent and strung to kill, not to shine. A knife chipped from stone does not look fine, but it cuts flesh clean when supper depends on it. No one here asks for decoration. Tools carry weight only in whether they work, and all that is heavy for no use is left behind. Simplicity carries forward. Ornament does not. In the low glow of evening fire, your small cachie lies near. A coiled snare line is ready to set, a knife edge newly sharpened on stone. Strips of thin hide stretched taut, drying for cord. They seem small each on their own, but stacked together, they matter. If your one blade breaks tomorrow, these smaller pieces keep you from losing more. If the weather hardens and bites deeper, the garments you've patched with scrap will still protect. These scraps and shapes are insurance, buying time by being prepared before loss comes. The hours at the fire are not idle. The sounds of cutting, scraping and rubbing join the crackle of pine branches. Each motion shapes the day that follows. Rest is not found only by lying down, but by working small tasks into readiness now. A string tied, a hide softened, a bone carved into a gouge, all of them turn the weight of night into something tangible you can hold tomorrow. Without these rhythms, even a strong body fades out here, stripped by winter more quickly than you think. And so you sit close, knees drawn up, hands stiff but steady, over the tools scattered on the pine floor. The day's labour lies in fragments spread before you, a scraper dulled from hide work, a sinew cord wound short but strong, a pouch with pieces enough to lash a frame if your shelter loosens. Nothing stands as more than a small success, but each one together makes the narrow line between lasting through winter and being claimed by it. Out here, survival is measured less by what you ate today than by what you shaped with your hands to face tomorrow. In the end, these tools are not treasures, but proof that you learned what the land asked of you. They gather beside the fire in their plainness, never meant to impress, only to be used. When morning rises again, they will be tied to the pack, tucked into the coat, fitted to the bowstring. They walk ahead with you into the cold, carrying the edge of survival a little further into the season. And in that quiet space, with nothing but your fire's crackle and the weight of the forest around you, the work of making ends. The silence that follows your labour settles in heavier than before, pressing into the edges of the shelter. No task left, no tool requiring your attention, only the slow burn of the coals beside you. The stillness grows deep, unbroken by voice or step, and in its grip you begin to feel the other burden waiting for every man alone in these ridges. Days pass with little more than the sigh of wind through pines and the steady pull of the river below. These sounds never leave, yet they do not answer back. They are not voices, only a backdrop that fills the hours spent working traps or mending tools by firelight. Some seasons slip by with weeks between the sound of another human word. That absence quiets more than the air. It presses on the body until it feels like a weight no blanket can lift. Silence out here is not a pause between shared thoughts. It is a landscape of its own, steady as cold or hunger, demanding you learn how to carry it. Over time, solitude begins to move, like another presence at your side. It does not call out, nor echo. Instead, it presses itself close, settling like snow on a man's shoulders. The hours of walking, hauling wood, and tinkering with tools unfold in that same muted space, interrupted only by boots cracking through frost or steel glancing bone. At moments, you find yourself sending words into the air, a mutter when a knot slips, a remark pitched toward nothing at all. A voice said aloud is strange after so much stillness, but hearing your own tone in the air steadies something profound, even if there's no one to catch the sound. The fire quickly becomes the closest to a companion you hold. At night, when shelter narrows the world to flicker and shadow, you may speak toward its glow. Never in long recitations, never in conversation, but in short, plain words. The words matter less than the strange relief of sound. The fire answers only in crackles, but sometimes that is all it takes to remind you you're still here. A man stripped of voices will turn even to flame itself for company. Your ear longs for sound, even when your mind knows no reply will ever come. Such silence sharpens thought in ways noise never could. In town, voices and distractions used to scatter the mind. Here, every thought grows louder without interruption, repetition, looping, until memory runs like a rhythm. That clarity cuts two ways. It drives sharper focus, allowing you to read subtle breaks in snow or tie a snare with precision. Yet, in hours after sunset, with sky bright from stars, the same clarity turns sharp into ache, filling your chest with a weight you cannot set down. With no friend beside to offer reply or laughter, you circle alone through the corridors of your own memory. It is in those moments between tasks and sleep that old images push through. They arrive quietly, not summoned, but insistent. A busy room lit by lanterns, tables crowded with sound, faces you once knew. Laughter layered until it blurred in warmth, here out beneath pine shadow. Such scenes flare up with ache, but they fade quickly too, pressed thin by winter quiet until only the echo lingers. For a moment, there is happiness in recalling them, followed swiftly by hunger for what is no longer at hand. Even good memories carry their weight when no company exists to share them. In the wilderness, the cold may gnaw at bone, but solitude strips a man to what remains underneath. Here, there is little need for posturing. There is no audience for boasts, no place for masks. Every habit a man once wore among crowds, cleverness, pride, false strength, slips away because the hills do not notice. The mountains respond not with praise or insult, but with nothing at all. Nature strips you to the shape you truly wear alone. An old trapper once said of this life, "Out here, a man knows exactly where he stands." Nature doesn't lie to you. Don't cheat you the way a smiling man will back east, slit your throat for $1. In that truth lies the quiet gravity of these ridges, hard, unyielding, but honest in ways people often are not. When quiet builds long enough, sleep itself grows restless. Lying on pine branches above frozen ground, eyes chase the flicker of fire across the walls. The body may ache for rest, but the mind refuses stillness. Questions circle, faces revisit, voices replay. The blanket pulls tight, the chest folds against knees, yet thought continues to move. Nights grow long in this way, hours stretching wider when no clock but stars above can mark them. Weariness comes, but still the mind resists closing. Solitude gives a heaviness that no exertion can wear away. Only patience answers it, the willingness to lie and endure the waiting until morning arrives. Yet something settles as the days and nights continue to turn. What first pressed like a burden shifts like a blade into a tool. The silence becomes a teacher. You learn to slow down without the pull of company, to work with meaning placed only in the task itself. There is no applause for stretching a hide, boiling coffee grounds, or lashing saplings, yet the work itself proves enough. Gradually, each act finds weight simply by being done. The quiet, once threatening, shapes patience, pressing steadiness where distraction once scattered the self. Pastimes themselves shrink to what cannot be carried away. Some men carve scrimshaw into bone scraps, others whittle wood into figures that watch from behind packs. A surprising truth, admitted by more than one, is that reading was deeply missed. One old trapper said what he longed for most was books, history especially. It seems out of place at first, a man so deep in harshness, pining for pages, yet it speaks of how solitude hungers not only through the stomach, but through the mind. A single book could have softened weeks of silence, but few ever crossed these valleys. Memory and thought were all most had to lean on. There are two subtler companions found in snow and timber. The ever-present hum of the river, though wordless, carries on faithfully night and day. Fox or hare leave trails, their movements drawn across the white like letters you read each morning and evening. The fire itself, even without response, fills the shelter with rhythm. Over time, those presences gather a small weight of their own. They do not replace human company, but together they build a wider kind of presence that can keep you steady. It is not loneliness erased, but loneliness carried differently, woven back into the living world around you. Still, truth remains each night when stars climb higher, even after you have learned to carry solitude, even after you have softened to its lessons. Some part aches for voices returned. This longing does not vanish, it only quiets. But the mountains carve another truth alongside the ache. You can live without it. A voice turned toward the fire, a hand pressed to prints in snow. These gestures steady you long enough to last. Alone you begin to settle with yourself fully, and that becomes as much a tool as any snare or blade at your belt. The wilderness takes many comforts from you, but in return, it trains endurance that runs deeper than warmth or food alone. When the dark edges of night draw tighter and your fire hums low, you sit knowing solitude presses heavy and sharp, yet also reshapes into a kind of strength. It may not give joy, but it grants the means to withstand. That balance carries you forward. And soon, after long work and quiet hours, night bends you back toward the circle of firelight, where a different kind of stillness begins to take hold. The fire steadies as evening settles, gathering you into its narrow circle of light. The long work of the day lies behind, traps checked, wood hauled, meat cooked and stored. Around the shelter, pelts stretch stiff in the cold, their damp edges kissed dry by smoke before the wind can freeze them hard. Above the coals, thin strips of meat darken and curl, their fat dripping into the ash below in quick, hissing sparks. It is not a feast, not abundance, but it is food, and the body knows what it means to have it ready at the close of such hours. The flame burns cleaner now, calmer than when it fought storm and wet wood. Each log catches sharp, breaking with dry cracks that sound louder under the black sky. Once in a while, knots burst with a sharp report, sending sparks leaping upward in sudden bursts of gold before fading back to nothing. The glow stretches no farther than a few steps, maintaining its claim to this small patch of ground. Beyond it, shadows gather, too deep to pierce, the dark of trees holding as sure as any wall. Yet inside this ring of firelight, a measure of safety presses close. It is a fragile barrier, but one strong enough for now. Muscles sore from dragging saplings and pushing through snow begin to ease towards stillness here. Your shoulders loosen. The ache gathers into a dull weight instead of a sharp burn. The split lines on your palms sting less, their heat blunted when turned into the warmth of flame. You feel the skin throb as it shifts between air and firelight, but it is work's honest mark, softened in small ways now. Weariness grows heavy, yet it is not the torment of exhaustion. It is a kind of weight that arrives with purpose, pressed into you by hours of labour. In this place, the body does not fight against that weight, it gives in to it. The surrender is not weakness, but an earned peace, the kind only steady effort can grant. Leaning back, your chest rises in a slower rhythm. Breaths lengthen, no longer pulled quick and sharp, as in the teeth of the storm. Every part of you knows strain, yet it carries its answer too, quiet at the edge of effort. Town life never brought this stillness. Its noise pressed on you without pause, restless even in sleep. Here quiet endures after labour, and by accepting heaviness you find calm. The peace is not born of ease, but of the body having done what was asked, then allowing itself to drop gently into rest. Around the fire every trace of the day waits visible. Pelts stiff against wooden frames, drying near the edge of the smoke, the meat browning, hissing, not plenty enough to satisfy imagination, but enough to meet hunger. Tools left near the coals, drying before they freeze tight, the shelter itself leaning at the clearing's edge. These pieces speak not of comfort, but of proof. A day worked through, tasks pressed to completion. Each step of daylight has become something that remains behind. More than emptiness, more than hours vanished. The mind sees it and sinks deeper into stillness, able to rest because something tangible lies at hand. You see them gathered like coals. Each small act, a snare set straight, a pelt scraped clean, a fire coaxed alive, is one ember added to your account. On their own, faint, but together they glow enough to push back shadows that would otherwise set in close. The work keeps despair at bay, the simple weight of action repeated in exchange for another measure of patience. There is no triumph here, no scene of victory, but the quiet tally shows itself enough to steady your chest into a slower rise and fall. Cold presses faint behind the wall of boughs, but fire redefines it. Frost still gnaws at your back, creeping through the seams of blanket and coat. Yet the flame makes it answerable. When it advances, you stretch your hand for a log, lay it across the coals, and watch the margin push back again. The act repeats itself through hours, log placed, fire brightened, cold held outside where it belongs. It is simple, but simple things are often everything in their time. With wood at hand and coals quick to rouse, your place within the circle feels secure. The forest itself has not softened. Darkness waits close beyond the clearing, strict as ever, heavy with silence. A single step into it would bring you back under its law. But so long as you remain within the short boundary of flame, the wilderness is held back just enough. The unseen dangers, hunger crouched in the dark, cold, waiting to claw deeper, are pressed only a few paces farther, but those few allow pause. The fire is not luxury, it is defence, the barrier between your small living space and everything that would take it if left unguarded. Without it, your place shrinks to nothing. With it, you survive another night. In time, flame bows lower. Logs split in half are now embers, their red lines running softly together. No more sparks climb upward, only a steady glow pooling across the narrow ground. The bed of coals lies open, less fierce, though more enduring than the brightest bursts of fire earlier. Your own body shifts with it, just as flame softens, so your neck bends loose, your eyes drift heavier, pulled down toward the same steadying place. Weariness spreads with the content that comes of work done, not idleness carried. Sleep nears without edge. It comes slowly, like dusk easing in without warning, until you recognize it too late. Blink stretch long. The body folds in small, the chin pressed near the chest, arms drawn close. The mind no longer strains at memory or silence, soothed instead by the one quiet truth left. The day is over. The fire still burns. Rest comes not because you seek it, but because the effort of hours claims it. Surrender is all the body can give to such weight, and the surrender itself feels like a kind of reward. The mind resists little now. Thought unwinds under the rhythm of fire's hush. Where morning brought hunger and sharp air, where daylight turned into strain, the close of night softens it. Fatigue becomes its own medicine. The aching joints, the bruised muscles, the hands cracked from cold submit themselves finally. Inside calm reaches you in a way towns and voices never did. It is found only in this borderland between shadow and flame, and every night here traces that same arc. Tomorrow waits with its cost already written. The cold will come again, and with it the heavy work of keeping breath warm and food close. You do not pretend otherwise. But tonight, strength returns through surrender. Even without dreams, the body wins a reprieve in this brief companionship with fire. The wilderness demands much, it does not forgive. Yet this fragile circle, the coals and flame, answers it with what no other tool can give. For as long as men have walked through darkness, fire has been the single, irreplaceable skill. No fire, no life, simple as that. It cleared away teeth waiting in the night, kept the freezing air from settling into lungs, gave a man claim where otherwise he would be nothing but slow meat for something faster and hungrier. The truth is neither romantic nor grand, yet it stands higher than any other fact in these woods. With fire you endure. Without it, all that waits is the dark beyond its glow. The flames flicker low, casting their quiet shine across shelter walls and the tools drying nearby. Shadows gather thicker at the tree line, yet here in the circle of light, warmth carries you into something gentler. After hours of weariness and the quiet dwindling of fire's glow, the gift that night holds is rest. The storm has fallen silent, its edge dulled until only faint winds move across the trees outside your walls. They no longer claw or howl, only brush softly through branches, carrying a slower rhythm. Inside, the fire lies low, its flames pulled down into a narrow bed of red that hums gently against the dark. Its glow flickers across boughs and unfinished shelter walls, steady but no longer burning with urgency. The world narrows to a dim warmth and a body that has earned enough stillness to surrender. That warmth spreads gently through the space, not as a blaze but steady, like an unseen hand resting on your skin. Your palms feel it, your knees, your shoulders under the worn blanket. The heat is thin but constant, enough to blunt the sharpness of cold pressing from outside. Each muscle, tugged and strained through daylight, yields inch by inch, no longer held taut. The pain that cut across your shoulders eases now into deep heaviness, the kind that anchors rather than harms. You feel yourself caught between cold and warmth, not free of either, but steady within their balance, sheltered enough that the body no longer fights. The forest continues singing its quiet song. Without storm, the smallest details reach you clearly. A branch snapping, the faint rustle of needles softened by snow, the light scuffle of something settling into the night. These sounds bring no threat, only reminding you that life stirs near, even in stillness. Beyond the shelter lies darkness measured in miles, yet in this moment the forest feels closer, each rustle and call pulled nearer. Where wind once threatened, now it soothes, carrying calm. The mountain, so sharp in daylight, offers in darkness a softer face. Stillness spreads through your body as you lean into the mat of pine, breath gathering slower against your chest. The rhythm grows steady, air faintly edged with smoke and resin. Your eyes lower with each blink. No longer pushed open by habit, they drift toward closing with ease. The mind softens as well. Trails walked, poles bound together, hands dipped in frozen creek water, all return in memory for a moment, yet with no demand. They do not arrive as burdens to be answered. They rest as finished things, small weights you lay down one by one. With every thought that passes, your mind empties of tasks still undone. There's nothing left to claim tonight. It is exhaustion, not choice, that clears the mind of worry. The mountain strips you throughout the day, breath drawn harsh through lungs, legs pressed through snowdrifts, skin bitten raw by wind. Its edges grind you down until the only things left are food, fire, and shelter. The rest, the false disputes, the smaller doubts, are burned away in labour. What remains is what matters most. That is why sleep here does not come thin or restless. It comes heavy, complete, gifted by the mountain in return for endurance given. Struggle by day perfects the depth of night. Across the embers, light shifts more slowly now, glowing without a sharp edge. It reaches faintly across your hands, warming them less by heat than by presence. Each faint pulse of fire is another breath of reassurance, another sign the cold cannot yet take over. Around the boundaries of the shelter, darkness presses heavier, but you no longer measure it as danger. Your body trusts in the frame you built, in the blanket across your shoulders, in the work that brought you here. Most of all, it trusts in fatigue, which settles the mind enough to release what daylight made sharp. Your weight lowers more completely onto the pine bed. What seemed stiff before no longer resists. Muscles fall slack, arms folding where they will, legs drawing inward without strain. The body does this on its own, without you bidding it, as though every part now knows it has done enough. It is the natural end of labour, yielding not from weakness but from completion. Sleep is not asked for, it is taken. The mind drifts in its last fragments, clinging to old habits. It listens for threats, recalls half-formed tasks, and raises questions only to let them fall again, unanswered. At last, even these thoughts loosen. Footsteps made, meat laid by the fire, wood split and burned, walls raised high enough, all is settled. Every need has been covered, as far as one man can cover them. You hold back no fight because there is nothing left to fight this night. Breath takes over, as rhythm, steady as the coals glowing low. When sleep nears, it does not strike but arrives slowly. One moment, your gaze settles on faint orange across the wall. The next, it slips downward without return. The dark that follows is not void. It moves with calm current, carrying you along in its own direction. It is a surrender that feels like floating. For hours, the mountain demanded everything at once. Now it requires only that you let go. Warmth hums faintly through the fibres of the blanket and the pine beneath you. Your limbs grow heavy, as though pressed gently into the earth, your breath low but even. The sharpness of thought, of worry, of solitude itself fades. You yield simply because your body makes you yield. In return, the night offers something rare, calm that cannot be faked, rest that cannot be rushed. The peace is not in resistance, but in the very act of letting exhaustion carry you down. Yet even in that surrender, another layer remains. Out here, rest is never full blindness. The body accepts sleep, but the senses watch faintly from beneath it. Some part of you listens still for a branch cracking too close to camp, for wind shifting into storm again, for the sound of a predator's pad pressing into snow. It is not fear, nor is it waking, but the mountain man's skill of sleeping with half the mind turned outward, always ready. The body may yield, but the core remains aware, honed by habit, shaped by survival. So sleep gathers you, but not as luxury, not as escape. The day's work perfected it, burning away distraction until only food, fire and cover mattered. Those are secured, nothing else presses now. Muscles let go, mind eases into quiet, but the edge of awareness still sharpens within, steady as any blade. It is sleep that restores, yet does not abandon vigilance. It belongs wholly to this place. And here, in these hours when cold breathes just beyond thin walls, when fire burns low into its last ash, you lie carried by the rare gift the wilderness gives, deep rest. Work has ended, struggle spent itself, thoughts surrendered. The mountain still looms, tomorrow still waits, but not tonight. Tonight it offers this brief reprieve, and you accept it fully, slipping into a deep, dreamless slumber, your senses faintly attuned, even as your body lies still. This night closes with nothing more asked, no task waiting in shadows. All that matters is finished. Breath steadies, fire glows faint, weight drifts into sleep. In this quiet moment, the gift is not triumph or comfort, but the simple truth of rest freely claimed. And when dawn comes again, you will rise to meet what waits beyond the trees. But for now, rest holds you, and that holding becomes the measure of endurance carried from one day into the next. The day closes without triumph or defeat, only the steady truth of endurance. Each mile walked, each trap tended, and every log placed upon the fire gathers meaning here in the quiet. The body bore its burden, the hands carried their tasks, and now there is a stillness that feels complete. In the soft crackle of coals and the muffled hush of snow beyond the shelter, peace begins to settle fully. Hardship has carved its mark through every hour, yet it also shapes the calm you feel now. Even in a land that takes so much, night leaves you one rare gift: rest. As you settle into the quiet, let the mountain silence carry you toward rest. If you find peace in these stories, subscribe and drift with us again soon. Good night.